I have been asked to say a few words about the relevance of Marxism today for a conference on Marxism which is being held in Tehran in Iran, which I consider to be one of the most important countries in the world. It's a difficult task to say a lot about Marxism in a few words, but I would like to preface my remarks, first of all, by thanking and congratulating my friends of the Exit Theatre group in Tehran for translating my work on the ideas of Karl Marx. Now, perhaps we can begin with a challenge. I would imagine that a country that is with such a proud cultural tradition as Iran, that there must be in Tehran some very good libraries, I would imagine. And I'll make a little challenge to you. Tomorrow morning, after the conference is finished, you go to the library in Tehran, university library, whatever, and take out any bourgeois book that you care to about philosophy, politics, economics, sociology, written 150 years ago. Take out that book, read it, and I will tell you in advance that that book will merely be of historic interest. Actual application to the present world situation next to zero. If, on the other hand, you take out a book written over 150 years ago, in 1848, 47, 48, by two young men, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, a book called The Communist Manifesto, I think you'll have a surprise. If you haven't read it, you certainly will have a big surprise. And if you have read it, please read it again. This is a book which I've read hundreds of times, and every time I read it, I learn something new. Now, this book, written over 150 years ago by two young men, Marx and Engels, in my opinion, is the most modern, up-to-date and contemporary book that you can read. Why do I say this? Because in the pages, there are very, very few pages, by the way, it's only a small book, it isn't a huge volume, but in this highly compressed volume of ideas, what you will find is a description of the world, not the world of 1848 at all. Nothing to do with the world of 1848. What you'll find is an accurate description of the world today, of our world, our planet, as it is at the present time. And furthermore, an analysis, a profound historical, philosophical, scientific analysis of our world, the world of 2019. This is an astonishing feat. I mean, there's no other book that you can say that of. And that fact in and of itself tells you something about the superiority of the method of Marxism. For example, I'll give you two instances. Globalization now is a buzzword. It's supposed to be a modern idea, a recent thing. Well, not so. Globalization was predicted by Marx and Engels in the pages of the Communist Manifesto, where they explain that capitalism begins to form as a national market, but the development of the productive forces under capitalism reaches a point where it goes beyond the national market, and you get the creation of an international market, a world market, which unites all the different national states, big and small, into one indivisible, huge, decisive unit. At the moment when I'm speaking, that is perhaps the most important truth of the historical period that we're living in. It's the crushing domination of the world market. That was predicted, of course, in the Communist Manifesto. I'll give you another example. In 1848, when Marx and Engels were writing this marvelous document, there were no large enterprises anywhere in the world, not even in England, which at that time was the only country where capitalism really had developed. It was at its early beginnings in France and Germany. In countries like Russia and Iran, of course, it was the music of the future. But even in England, all of the workshops actually were small workshops. Marx and Engels predicted that because arising out of free market economics and competition, out of competition comes monopoly, comes the creation of gigantic multinational companies, and that's of course the case today, that you have an enormous process of concentration of capital, and as Marx predicted at the time, an enormous concentration of extreme poverty and suffering on one end of the scale, and obscene profits and wealth and ostentation at the other end of the scale. That's actually the case today, where 1% of the human race possesses more wealth than all the rest of the humanity put together. This is a laboratory expression of what was predicted by Marx and Engels over 150 years ago. Now, what this tells us is that, and by the way, many enemies of socialism, many bourgeois economists who have nothing to do with Marxism and socialism, now admit the superiority of Marxism, at least in the terrain of economics. As far as politics, of course, and revolution are concerned, they have a different position. But as far as Marxist economics is concerned, this is now considered to be a very important contribution to human thought, which of course it was. And the fact that Marx and Engels were able to make such marvelous and accurate predictions about the world in which we live today, long after they're dead and gone, tells us something about the superiority of the method of Marxism. Because Marxism began not as an economic theory, by the way, but as a philosophy. A marvelously rich and profound philosophy, which is called dialectical materialism, which again I recommend you to look into that. And Marxism covers a vast area of human thought and experience, not just politics, not just economics, but also culture, drama, literature, art, science. It's all present in this marvelous gold mine of ideas and theories, wonderful, profound, brilliant, beautiful theories, which make up the vast body of Marxist ideas and Marxist theory. And therefore, in the short time that I have at my disposal, of course, it's utopian, it's impossible for me to deal more than just skate over the surface of this. But what I would encourage all of you to do, what I would not encourage you to do, is to read books about Marxism. Forget about that, because most of them are hostile works written by the enemies of socialism, because they have no interest in promoting the genuine idea, or even explaining the genuine ideas of Marx and Engels. No, my friends. If you want to know about the ideas of Marx and Engels, read Marx and Engels. And you will find, I think, to your agreeable surprise, that here is a vast corpus of work, of literary, of philosophical, of economic studies, which covers the whole gamut of human experience and thought. And above all, of course, and I finish on this note, it isn't just a question of ideas and theories. Theory is a weapon, it's a tool to help us, A, understand the world in which we live, but also to change it. That's the point. The young Marx, when he was a young man, just beginning on this tremendous intellectual voyage of discovery, he said the following: philosophers have only interpreted the world in different ways. The point, however, is to change it. That's the challenge that faces our generation, the present generation. Capitalism has outlived its usefulness. It's caused a tremendous crisis of suffering and depredation on a worldwide scale. It's a system which has outlived its usefulness and which is rotten, ripe to be overthrown and replaced by something on an entirely superior level of human civilization, which we call socialism, or if you like, communism. It's the same as far as I'm concerned, a classless society. Yes, but the way to do that, the way to achieve this future society, can only be done in one way, and that is by conquering, first of all, these marvelous ideas, this marvelous tool, this powerful weapon, which is a lever which the working class and the oppressed masses and the intellectuals and the students and the youth, who are a very important component of the socialist revolution, can actually bring about a change, a marvelous change, which will transform our world into the present nightmare that capitalism has plunged it, to a future which far exceeds all of the glories of Persepolis and of Athens and of Rome in the past, leading the way, opening the way to a new stage of human civilization under socialism.